All right. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Happy Saturday. I am just pasting a link in right now. It's the link to this tutorial on my website. You guys know that it is always free to attend my live tutorials, but tips are always appreciated and always welcomed. And if you choose to tip $5 or more, then I'll send you a copy of the recording. So the link is there in the comments. I don't want to talk about it a lot. I want to get into painting with you guys and going through this stuff. So business out of the way at the beginning. How is everybody? Hi, Barb. Hi, Rex. Hey, Jan. Hey, Sharon. Hey, Mandy. Elizabeth. Yay! Manon's here. I'm so glad you're here. Hey, Autumn. All kinds of people on today. Fantastic. Hello, Elizabeth. All right, so we are going to talk about doing overlapping designs. I'm actually going to just walk around here. I'm going to show you a project that I had done before. It's just a little planter box that I got from the dollar store. And I did this project a long time ago, but I've gotten lots of great feedback on it. And I've had so many other ideas of how I'd like to kind of take this design and translate it into some really large canvas work. So these are, let me see if I can get back a little bit further. So this is just a little planter box. It's even got the plastic lining and everything in it. So I did these overlapping color grade mandala inspired circles. So we're going to do this today. We're going to do this on a 5x7 canvas. I get my canvases at the dollar store. These are from Dollarama here in Canada. You can get a pack of 3 of them for $2 or $3, I think. Something really inexpensive, which is nice. These are canvas panels as well. They are not the stretched canvas. I really like these stretched canvas. There's a couple things to know about stretched canvas. When you're doing stretched canvas, the fabric tends to be a little bit more fibrous, so you're going to get more bumps and everything that could impact the shape of your dots and your placement. So if you're going to use a stretched canvas, you really want to give it at least 3 coats of a base color of paint and then just kind of feel in between. Some people even sand in between. That's an option too. The other option is to get yourself some gesso. So you can get some gesso at Michael's. And on Amazon, I think there's even black gesso. This is the gesso I have. It's clear. I think it was about $27 for this bottle, but with a 40% off coupon. And I'm telling you, you don't use a lot of it. You're not going to go through it that quickly. Unless you're doing, obviously, tons of huge canvases. But it does make a difference. It gives you a really nice smooth surface. I just had this pad of paper here because this was still wet when I painted it. And I didn't want it to get on my pretty blue background. I thought my blue background looked awful nice and I wanted it to stay clean. So let me jump in. Yes, totally like Romper Room Barb. I see Jan and Manon and oh yeah, sorry, thank you. Sorry, Axel. How you doing? Yeah, totally. Hi, Cindy. Hey, Kathy. Hey, Jill. And Danica. Hello, Elaine. Fantastic. We got a good crew here today. Lovely, lovely, lovely. So we're going to get started off by how to prep your canvas, as in getting your guidelines done. So here is the thing that I like about this design. You don't have to find the center of your canvas. You can just decide where you want your mandalas to go, and you can literally throw them wherever you want to. You could, if you want help with placement, there's a couple little tricks that you could actually do if you wanted to kind of decide where you want to place it. I'll just show you sometimes what I'll do. And this isn't to represent size. This is just something to kind of throw on here. So I've got these 3 little resin discs. I'm just going to chuck them, maybe. And then I can just kind of move them around and decide where I want them to be. I can throw in a couple of bigger ones if I want to. But you could, if you really wanted to, if you have a lot of time on your hands too, just kind of chuck them and see where they land. And then space things out that way. But what I'm going to do for this one is I'm just going to just start drawing some lines. I'm just going to start drawing some vertical lines. And then just picking a few random ones. Probably not terribly random, right? That's okay. And then I'm going to do the same with some lines here. Just throw a few of them in there. So I'm going to pick 3 different centers now, okay? Because I want to put at least 3 on here, but I want to kind of get going a little further. But I don't know how many I want to put in here, but we're going to start with 3. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick that one. I'm going to pick this one. Maybe I'm going to pick a few. I think I'm going to pick this one. And I'm going to pick this one. So what I'm going to do now, and you can change this anytime, but this is just to find our circles. So I'm going to use my compass, and I'm going to put my compass on each circle, and I'm going to pick kind of how big I want each one of them to be, but again, I can choose any time. It's very random at first. So I'm going to start there. I'm going to put one here, do the same thing. Do another one here. And I'm going to draw the whole circle because I want to see where they overlap. And then I'm going to do another one here. So my thought is that I want to have slightly more overlap here and more overlap here. So I'm actually going to go and I'm going to increase the size just a little bit and just make them a little bit bigger like that. Going back to my centers again, just going to keep drawing, going to have a little more of an overlap. And then I'm going to go in with an eraser. And then we'll go from there. We're going to have some blank spots, and that's okay. If we get to that point, then we can figure out what we want to do with that empty space. But for now, we're just going to go with getting this overlapping and kind of getting comfortable with that. So I know I'm not going to use all of these lines. So what I'm literally going to do, and this might be overkill, but I find I like to start with a clean slate so I can kind of see a little bit better what I'm trying to accomplish. So I'm going to use an eraser, and I'm going to go around, and I'm only going to, like I'm going to decide which one I want to be the full one that's not overlapped by anything else. So I want this one to be full and whole. So anything inside this space, sorry, I realized I forgot to say that. So you pick one that you want to be kind of whole. You don't have to either, but you can pick where you want them to overlap. So I want this one to be a whole one. Okay, so I've done that. And then I want this one to be the next one. Do I? Yes, I want this one. This one is going to be over top of this one. So I'm going to erase these lines here. So any lines that belong to this circle, I'm erasing from inside of this one. And I'm going to let this one overlap there. So I'm going to then erase all of the lines in this one. Like that. So this one's on top, this one is underneath this one, but it's over top of this one. And then I can go and I can erase all of these other lines that don't play a part anymore. So anything outside of these circles, anything inside of these circles, because again, this is going to give me a really quick look at a fresh slate of what this piece is going to look like and where do we have empty spaces. I apologize, this is shaking because I'm erasing. Oh shoot, and I just did that one too. There we go. I am going to go back in and draw some other guidelines, but not too many, and I'll tell you why. The reason that we're not going to draw too many guidelines is we're going to practice the spacing in the clock method, and but you can have a couple in there just to let you know you're on track, but I don't want you to get super attached to the guidelines, as in thinking that you have to follow them. and match up to them. They're just there to be a little bit of a helping hand to let you know if your spacing is still there. Okay? So I'm going to put my pencil back in my compass, and I'm going to go back to my centers. And I'm just going to draw a few other guidelines, and just being aware of where I've already erased them and where I want them to show up. I'm not going to do too many. And I'm not going to add any other lines at this point either. So I'm going to do this one. A couple more. And one more here. There we go. We'll go here, do this one. So we're going to repeat this with all of the different big circles that we have, and it's going to keep it in the overlapping position for us so that we know where we want this to go through. And we're keeping the ones in the front that we want. So I can start with this, for example, and just kind of do that. And then, thank you. And then I can go back in and erase a couple lines again. So this is really, really helpful to get these guidelines so that you know what pieces you want to be in front and what ones you want to be behind. Okay. When I have tried to do this without going to this length with the guidelines, it has been a mess, and things haven't stayed straight, and things overlapped that weren't supposed to overlap. So it's definitely worth going through the time to draw all of this out. All right, let me see if there's any comments. Hey, Ish. Okay, and if anybody has any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the comments. We'll do our absolute best to answer all of the comments for you. Okay, so I've got this drawn out. I have a couple of blank spaces here. Totally okay. I can fill them in later. I can decide what I want to do. But we're going to start with this one here. Now, what I've decided I wanted to do was to have, I'm going to use 3 different colors. I've got a gray scale, I've got some pinks, and I've got some teals. So I want to create some grayscale so that I'm looking at it kind of like I did with this, where it's going from light to dark. Or it can do the opposite. You can go from dark to light and just slowly grading from one shade of the color to a different color. Now, you'll notice that I have 5 grays mixed up. So I'm going to mix 2 more of the pinks and 2 more of the teals. So when I was kind of laying these out, I kind of decided which ones I wanted to be my lightest and the darkest. So to create these ones in the middle, I'm literally just going to mix a little bit of those 2, mix a little bit of those 2, then mix a little bit of those. So that's where we're going next. I'm going to grab my palette. So when you're creating a color grade, you can start with, if you just have a single color, you don't have to do this many colors. You can start with just a single color and just gradually add different amounts of white to that color, and that will get you the color grade. That's what I did on that planter. But I already had a bunch of these mixed up, so I thought, you know what, let's just use them. So I'm going to dump some of that in there. Still have lots left. And then I'm going to try and mix as close to equal parts of this pink in with this one. It's going to be to a point where it's going to look like there might not be that much of a color difference, and that's okay. It needs to be very, very gradual. So if it's playing tricks with your eyes and you aren't 100% sure if it's darker or lighter than it needs to be, it's okay. Don't worry about it. And always remember too that your paints are going to dry a bit darker than what you're going to see in the palette. Okay. So I'm going to mix this here, and I think I have enough to put in a couple other little paint containers. I buy my little paint containers at Dollar Tree, so they come looking like this. The other ones that I really like are the ones that come in a set like this. These ones are great to use, especially for smaller bits of paint. Hi, Belbeer. I'm doing great. How are you? I tried this techniques a few months ago. Disaster. Well, let's give it another shot. That's awesome. Disasters are good. Disasters show you what you like and what you don't like about what you're working on, right? So see, it doesn't look that much different to me. So I'm actually going to add a little bit more of this lighter pink, just to see. And at the very least, I can always add in a bit of white too if I want to. So there we go. Just that little bit lighter. So it'll be a very gradual thing. So yeah, those little paint pots are fantastic. They are great for storing different little bits of paint. Sometimes I'll put the paint back in... Oh, excuse me. Oh, that one crept up on me. Sometimes I'll put the paint back in the bottles. Even if they're not completely a perfect match to what came out of the bottle, if it's close enough, sometimes I'll put them back in, or I'll start to merge them together and use them to mix and create new colors. But I have literally hundreds of them all around this room. I'll show you. So I've got all of those over there. Oops. All of those all over there. I've got all of those over there. I've got a bunch on my other shelves too, and I have another drawer full of them in my little, storage thingy that I have, a little storage shelf. Okay, so there is pink number 2. So I took pink number 1. I kind of number them in my mind. The darkest to me is number 1. Then I had pink number 3, and then I need to now mix pink number 3 and pink number 1, which are the 2 lighter ones, and get myself a little bit of a mix. Now what I'm probably going to do is add just a little bit of the light pink. And I'm actually going to try, I think, to recreate this pink a little bit. But let's add in just a little bit of this dark one. There we go. And then we give that a stir, and we should get a pretty good mix of in between the two, which will be awesome. Perfect. So now we have all 5 colors of our pinks. A 5-color spread in these shades is really, really helpful because it gives you a little bit more option to either alternate your rows, and that's something you can do as well. You don't have to go from light to dark. You could go from just doing single rows of light to dark and then dark to light and then back to light to dark again. You can kind of do it any way that you want. It's one important thing to remember about this. There is no rules. No rules at all. If you want to do it and you want to try to do it and you want to play around with something, then absolutely do it. Try to resist the urge to get your masterpieces to look the same as someone else's. Okay? You are the only you on this planet. I've said this a couple times on my lives, and I'm going to keep saying it. You are the only you that exists. And if you are trying to make your artwork look like somebody else's, then you're not letting yourself shine through. And that's what we want to see. We want to see you shine through. So make sure that when you're trying this, perfection is not the goal. And that's a hard one sometimes. I get it. But perfection is not the goal. There we go. So I mixed my darkest color and my middle color, and I'm going to create, so that was number 1 and number 3. So this one is going to give me like a number 2 color. The one that should be nice and good in between them. And I'm getting paint all over my hands too. That's the best part. I love getting covered in paint. All right. So put this one in there. You could leave them in your palettes if you want to. You just want to make sure that if you're going to leave paints in palettes for any significant amount of time, which is really for acrylics any more than 20-30 minutes, make sure you have a damp paper towel that you can put over the little pots in your palette to keep those paints from drying out. I feel like I need to stir this again. There we go. So let's see, why not just mix the paint in the empty pot so you don't need to transfer it? Because I've done that sometimes, and what I end up doing is creating a whole pot worth of paint that I didn't mix to be the right colors. And I just enjoy this process. I don't necessarily do things the easy way, folks. I do the things that I enjoy the most, and I love doing this. All right, and then a little bit of that one in there. Give it a good stir. So perfect. Now we have our 5 different teals. Excellent. Didn't hear about the pots. Where do you get them empty? I get mine at Dollar Tree. You can also get them, I think, at Dollarama. Michael's, you can get them there as well. Yeah, but I really like having different little pots of paint all over the place. And especially if I end up mixing a color that I really like, it even if it starts to dry out, I keep it so that I can try and match it and at least hold it up against something else that I've made to see how they turn out together. So there we go, slightly darker. Give this a quick stir. And there we go. So now we have 5 teals, we have 5 grays, and we have 5 pinks. Now, you have a couple different options to do here. You can make each one a completely different color. You can alternate these colors within one if you want to. It's totally up to you. Again, there's no rules here, right? I'm going to do one where each circle is a different color. So I am going to start with teals. And I'm going to go from dark to light. Yes, really good idea, Rex. Yeah, where the beads and everything are. Yes, very, very good point. Yeah, and you know what, Jan? I think I honestly just don't even think about it. I sometimes I mix in the little pots, and I think that I was probably hoping that I could maybe work out of the palette, but then thought differently of it. I'm not 100% sure where my thought process was going, but at some point I decided I'm just going to do what I find fun. And I think I just give up. When I get tired of trying to make a decision in my head, sometimes I do that too. All right, I'm just going to clear some of this paint off of my hands because my hands are covered with pink and teal. And then we will get started. So the first thing we're going to do, though, is we're going to pick a center dot. So the center dot is going to be larger than most, because then we're going to do a large center dot and then work our way outwards from tiny dots to larger dots, and we're going to do some spacing too so we can add some accents in there as well. So, all right, well, I got paint underneath that fingernail, so that's just not coming out. All right, here we go. So we're going to pick a center dot size. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to choose the exact same center dot size for each one that I do. So that might mean, though, that when I put the center dot on this one, it might overlap a little bit into this one. That's okay, because I'm going to show you how to fix that. You can just paint over it with a little bit of black paint. Cut the lids off all my pots, and the lids were attached because it kept falling over from the weight. Yes, so I find that once it gets down past halfway empty, I have to fill it back up again if I want to continue to using it here. Yeah, because otherwise you'd have to cut the lids off. The other thing I'll do is I'll put like a tea towel or something and I'll lean it up against there so it doesn't tip over. But I totally know what you're saying. That can definitely be a frustration for sure. All right, so I'm using a size 21 tool. These are DIY Mandala Stones dotting tools. They come in a bunch of different sizes from 1 millimeter all the way up to 28 millimeters. And each end is a different size as well, and they're all numbered, which I really like. You'll also see me using these tools here, which are the nail dotting Stylus tools. I've got 2 different sets. This one has silicone brush type ends. These are great for mixing paint. These are also great for pulling paint off of anything if you make a mistake. So they come in 5 different sizes. And then I also have another set of tools of double-ended dotting tools, where each end of the tool is a different size, and there's 5 different tools in the set. I have ones like this only with wooden handles on my website. If you're looking for a set, you can get them on Amazon, you can get them on Etsy. There's a lot of great companies out there that sell dotting tools, and these DIY Mandala Stones are my absolute favorite. All right, so I'm going to choose my center dot. Let's get to painting. So I'm going to choose my center dot, and this is where you're going to want to just start kind of working all the way out. The guidelines are the most important when you're doing these overlapping patterns, right? Because at some point you're going to get to the spot where you are overlapping with everything, and you either need to do maybe a half dot or not do a whole dot. It's one of the reasons why on the flower pot, why I did this gold border, because then I didn't force myself to get too close to the next one. And then on these couple small ones where I did little half dots, then you can just paint over it with a gold border if you do that, or you can just go over it in black paint so that it covers everything up. But that's where the intricate work comes in. It's knowing when to stop, knowing when to not go over into the next spot, and where you want to take the time to do some alternate ways of covering that up, like using some black paint. Okay, so I'm not going to do super, super teeny tiny dots like this. So see how those are really teeny tiny orange dots around the center circle? I'm not going to do those, because what I want to do instead is a center kind of like this, where I've got slightly larger dots that go around, but they leave a little bit of a space to put in a little accent dot. So that's what we're going to do on this one, is we are going to make sure we leave space for some little accent dots. So when you are trying to center everything out, what you're going to do is what I call the clock method. So you dip your tool, and then you dot at 12 o'clock. And then you can spin the canvas and you can dot at 12 o'clock again. Spin the canvas, 12 o'clock again. Now I like to do this because I like to dot across from me to help me get straight lines. If I was to dot down here, we all kind of naturally lean to the left or to the right a little bit, so it can make our dots a little off center. Whereas for me anyway, I find it much easier to keep a straight line if I'm going straight across. So that's why I do this technique. But try it both ways. Learn how you work with that. So I'm now going to put another dot here, dividing those two sections in half. And we're going to go through and do that again. And I still turn it so that it feels like I'm dotting at 12. But I'm very, very focused on, am I putting the dot as close to the equal distance in between those other two as possible? When you have guidelines that are bisecting and trisecting, however you want to call it, throughout the canvas that you're trying to stay in line with, if you have just one dot that's off center from those lines and not lined up with the guidelines, then it can make everything else off center as well. So I prefer to eyeball it, but it's totally up to you and where you're comfortable. So again, I'm going 12 o'clock straight across and 12 o'clock straight across. Okay, now we're going to do it one more time. I'm going to divide this section in half. So see how there's a little bit of space left between those dots? I'm going to be able to put some really tiny little dots in between. If you are working at home and you don't have dotting tools, what you can use for those little teeny tiny dots would be a toothpick would work well. Anything with a really fine point to it. A sharpened pencil works really well too for the little tiny dots. There's all kinds of tools out there that you can buy that work fantastically. I was gifted a lovely micro dotter tool from my friend Jan. Thank you, Jan. I love the dotting tool so much, and it's this little teeny tiny point on it, and it creates these fabulous little tiny dots. It looks like this. It's a clay sculpting tool, but this one creates the tiny dots. If you're dotting at home as well and you don't have dotting tools, then using anything that is round and flat is going to work for you. The ends of pencils. I have a lip balm that I could use if I wanted to. Pencil erasers, nails, drill bits are great because they come in so many different sizes. It gives you a whole bunch to choose from. Pencils, cotton swabs, barbecue skewers, the wooden dowels that you can get from the dollar store. You can use a metal sharpener and actually sharpen them to make them a potential to be used as well. So there's all kinds of things that you can use without having to have any fancy tools. And don't go investing in anything fancy until you know if you actually really like it, right? You want to make sure you like the process and you like what you're working on and you want to do more before you go spending money on a bunch of tools that you may or may not need, right? So I'm getting out my DIY Mandala Stones tools because I have all my different sizes, because we're going to start to slowly, gradually make these dots a little bit larger. Sometimes, especially if you're moving from one tool set to a different one, so I did the first row in it with a nail dotting stylus tool, and because I'm now moving to my DIY Mandala Stones, it's a little bit of a guess for me because I don't know for sure how many millimeters this one is, so I can kind of see where they would match up. I'm guessing it was a 2 millimeter, maybe a 3 millimeter. So I'm going to start though with a 3. When you're testing things out, if you don't know for sure, always err on the side of caution. But any of those tools that you have at home, I started with crochet hooks. They worked really well. So there again, I'm choosing a size. I'm going to test these ones first, just to make sure they're still going to give me that space that I want in between. And these ones work really well. So when I'm going all the way around, I dot every other space. So you're dipping and dotting, dipping and dotting. And the key is also making sure that you clean your tool on a very regular basis. Like every 2 or 3 dots, sometimes every single dot. It depends on how thick your paint is. The more paint you let build up on the tool, it's going to impact the shape and size of your dots. So you want to make sure that you're getting a clean tool as often as possible. I usually go about every 3 dots because you'll start to see that the shape and the size of your dot is changing as well. So yeah, I started actually with crochet hooks. I went to Walmart and just bought a whole bunch of the crochet hooks, and they worked really, really well too. So the guidelines are still helpful here because I can see how close I'm getting to them. And because I'm kind of a little bit off, I can see that, you know, my center dot must have been slightly off. But because we're not trying to center a piece on a whole piece of canvas, it's not really that big of a deal, right? We're not trying to make it look centered from corner to corner. It just needs, I just need to keep creating fairly even rows all the way around, right? So what I've decided I'm going to do, and this is where you can decide, is how many rows of each color are you going to do? So how many rows of this dark teal should I do before I switch to the next one and the next one and the next one? So I know that as these rows move out, they are going to get bigger and bigger dots in them. So which means I'm going to see more and more of those paints. I'm happy with the amount of the dark teal here. So I'm actually just going to do 2 rows of each color and then go from there. So I'm going to pick my next color, which is the one that I mixed. That was the mix of number 3 and number 1. And we're going to go in here and we're going to start the next row. So I'm going to go up a size in my tool and start working my way around. Now I do every other dot to start, because then I center those ones, and then when I go in to do this one in the middle, I'm again not necessarily looking for how well it fits into this little dip here, but is it equal distance between these 2 dots here? That's how I really watch my spacing. And it's not going to be perfect, and it doesn't need to be, that's okay, but it gives you a good idea. Does anybody have any questions so far? Are we doing okay? How's the signal? Now, when you're doing this too, it's going to take us a little while before we get to the overlapping part, and that's okay, because it's really a fairly small part that seems more complicated than it actually is. It's really about just remembering where those lines are and potentially even having just a small paintbrush handy so that you can paint over the dots that move into a space that you really don't want them to be. These guidelines are going to be crucial for you in helping you keep track of where everything is in relation to the other pieces and how you want to block it out. Blocking it out is the most important part of the process for me on ones like this, so that I can at least have a plan and get a bit of a vision of how it's going to look to me when it's done. Okay, awesome, Sharon. Thank you. I think I got paranoid because we lost a lot of viewers, jumped off. So I guess people just had other stuff to do. That's just me having a moment. Okay, good. All right, so I'm going up a size again, and I'm going to do a second row of this color. And this is where it starts to move a little bit faster. I like these designs because they do up relatively quickly. How do we see the comments? I thought they automatically show up for you. I'm sorry, Cindy, I'm not sure. Mine just pop up for me and I see them. Anybody else have any feedback for Cindy? Okay, Elizabeth's here. Try swiping left. Oh, good advice. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry, Cindy. I'm not great help here. Jan to the rescue. All right, good. I'm glad you're still good then, Elizabeth. That's awesome. All right. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask, okay? This design is an incredible design to just continually practice over and over and over again. It helps you practice mixing your paints. It helps you practice your spacing. This is, if you were going to sit and repeat a design over and over again, this is the one that I would recommend that you do that with, because it will give you excellent practice. They were on, but I'm not seeing them now. That's really, really strange. Okay, great. Thanks, Belbeer. I use an iPad. I have to swipe up to the left of the video. Oh, wonderful. Yay. All right, here we go. So we're moving on to the third color now. We're going to start to see the change in these colors, which is going to be really, really satisfying. It's always the part that I really like when I'm like, ooh, that looks so seamless. So again, you're doing the dip and the dot, cleaning off your dotting tool every few dots. When the dots get a little bit larger, I tend not to clean it off quite as often. But this is also another great pattern to be doing to just get used to your tools and what size dots they create. Right? This is awesome practice. Oh, good. Glad you're sorted, Cindy. That's awesome. Yay. All right, so we are on color number 3. And we have 5 colors in total. I'm doing 2 rows of each color. And it's not going to be long before we're able to start on the next one. And I'm going to start on the complicated one that's under here just to give you some ideas on how to do this overlapping. Okay. Sometimes when you get out to this section too, if you're using numbered tools, what happens when you get out and you don't have enough colors? Just keep lightening up the paint. Yes, you can definitely do that 100%. Or you can mix in another color. Maybe after it gets out a little farther, you actually want to go from teal to a pink. So you could start mixing ones of those. Or you can just change your design and draw in another line and say, I'm actually just going to end this one here. And you can start to kind of imagine where it would come out. Right? So if I decided I wanted to start mine here, then I could recreate this line that's in here to match up to here. And I could figure out how to change that if I wanted to and to make this one bigger. That takes a little bit of time and practice, but it's definitely possible. All right, so second row of this one. Yeah, so you can keep going lighter and lighter. That's where it is a benefit of starting with a fairly dark color. Or sometimes, like I said, even going from one color to another. You know, you could go from green to teal. You could go from pink to purple. So it doesn't just have to be from dark to light. That's just the easiest place to start. So see how now this almost looks like the dot is a little bit too small because I've got a much bigger space here. So I'm actually going to put a little extra paint on my tool, because the more paint you put on your tool, the larger that dot's going to be as well. So I just want these ones to be a little bit larger. The other option, if adding more paint to your tool doesn't give you that larger dot size that you're wanting, you can always just go up another size if you have to. I used to love dotting with my crochet hooks. They were nice and easy, and it just thrilled me that I had another use for them. But drill bits are another great one. Like I said earlier, because they come in so many different sizes, then they're a really, really good option. Then as you go off the sides, keep placing your dot. Let the paint run over the side of the canvas, but it will still give you the right spacing, and it'll still give you the right amount of that dot showing. I love when I get to the edges and I can just let it drip over. I did that on a couple of heart stones and just let the color drip down, and it was pretty freaking cool. It looked really neat. So then on the next row, because I've been going up one tool size up until this point, but because I've had to add extra paint to this size to really get the size dot that I wanted, when I do my next row, I'm actually going to go up 2 sizes. And that will help, so I don't have to try and load up a huge amount of paint on a tool that really is just one size too small. But this is, again, a great way to really get to know your tools, know how much paint to put on them, and to really get to know your paints too, right? All of these paints are not created equally. You might buy 2 bottles of the same color of the same brand, and one might be waterier than the other. So you really need to not necessarily get to know your paints, but get to know what to do when the consistency of your paint changes quite a bit. So, for example, you will get to know your paints and know which brands you want to kind of go with. Apple Barrel craft acrylic paints tend to be very, very watery. Silver craft acrylic paints tend to be very, very watery. So you're going to get your favorites for sure. If it goes to the other end and gets, so here's the danger of too watery paint. Your paint can crack when it dries. That's a possibility if it's too watery, because the water is going to evaporate out of the paint and dry faster than the paint will, if that makes sense. So it can potentially crack. And if it's too thick, then you're going to get big peaks. So you really want to kind of know what are the qualities of thick paint versus thin paint so that you know how to adjust. And that's a really good question, Elizabeth, because I'm not completely convinced now that I'm going to get all the way out to this line with these next 2 rows. So let's just see what happens. Sometimes you just have to wing it, but let's see what happens. So this is my next color. I'm up 2 sizes in my tool. And there we go. When I have a smaller amount of paint, I prefer to use the other little paint pots. They don't dry out as quickly. There's just too much air in some of these big ones. So the little paint pots are really nice for these color grades when you don't want to mix a huge amount of any one color. These bigger ones that I'm using here are great if you're doing a larger project and you want to make sure you don't run out of a custom color that you've mixed up. So it all depends on how much of the paint you want to mix up. Let me see here. How do you combine colors easiest to get them to vary? Is it easiest to use, for instance, your last blue and add that color to each of the paint pots, or mix differently? That makes total sense, Elizabeth. So what I really like to do is mix them kind of all together, and I'll show you what I mean. I'll grab some paint bottles and I'll do a quick mix for you. I'll finish this row and then I'll do that. It'll be easier to show you, I think, than to explain it. I will try to explain it while I'm going through this, though. So what I would do is, if I know I want to go from color 1 to color 2, then what I would do is take those 2 colors and slowly start adding different amounts to each little pot in the palette. So for example, you can even just do it by drops. Okay, so if I want to do 1 drop in one of the little divots, then in the next one I'm going to do 2, and the next one I'm going to do 3, and then I'm going to alternate it. So I'll show you. This will be so much easier to show you. Let me move this aside. Okay, let me just move that for a second, and I'm going to grab a different paint pot. Okay, so mixing paints. Let's do this. So I'm going to pick, what color do I want to do? I'm going to go from blue to pink. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here with 1 drop of pink, with 2 drops of pink, then 3, 2, 3, and then 4, 3, 4, and then I'm just going to put the equivalent of like 5 or 6 drops in there, because that's my final color, the one that I have the most of. Now I'm going to take my blue. You tried to clean the reddish smudge, this one. You gotta lick it first, Sharon. You gotta lick it first. Lick your finger first. All right, so now I'm taking the blue. I'm not going to put any in this one because that's my pure pink. I'm going to go here, and this time I'm going to do 1 drop here, 2 drops here, 3 drops. So you see how I'm just going in reverse? 4 drops here, 2, 3, 4. And then this is going to be my pure color. Okay. You did lick your finger. Fantastic. Awesome. Have a great afternoon, Jan. Take care of yourself. All right, so now I'm going to mix these. Okay, so I'm going to start here, and I'm going to mix it up. And once you get it mixed up, you can decide if it's too much or not, right? But mix them all up first, because then you can go back in and add more color if you need to. Okay, so there's number 1. Here's number 2. Of course, this is all going to look exactly the same, isn't it? Yeah. So I can already tell that this is too blue. Right? I'm starting too blue here. So I'm going to add some more pink into that. It could just be the colors that I picked too. So there we go. That's a little bit better. I just didn't have enough pink in there. So you start like that, and then you can eyeball it, right? And add it in. I've never done it where I didn't have to add other color in at the same time. Yes, or you can add in white for sure. So I'm just adding this here. And white might be a good option with this one. I think I just chose a crappy color combination to show you, Elizabeth, and I'm really sorry. So let's just add a little bit more pink to this one. And let's even add a little light pink. Let's do that. Maybe a little light pink will work well for both. Oh, I gotta shake it though. I just chose a really bad color combination to show you, Elizabeth. I'm so sorry. I'll add some of that. And let's see here. I don't think I shook it enough, but. Or what you can do, another option that's probably would be better for you, Elizabeth, this is terrible, is you could put the same amount of pink in like this one, and this one, and this one. Well, yeah, you could put the same amount of pink in all of them, and then just start slowly gradually adding blue until you get to the color you like. I'm so sorry. And then let's see what this one is. This one's going to be very, very blue. Blue is really powerful too. It's like adding black. You don't need to add a lot, so I messed up there for sure. But I hope you're getting what I mean. Green and yellow is a really nice one to do. And then you can just keep mixing. Like there's pink isn't really showing up there, so we can add a bit more. right? Because at some point we want it to change from a pinker hue to a bluer, right? That one's actually pretty good. That one seems like a nice mix. Let's do that one. Yeah, those actually look pretty good. Maybe a tiny bit more pink in this one, but not much. There we go. Right, so I could keep adding a little bit more. So they're there. They're not great, but they're there. Hello, Autumn. How you doing? Done the color mixing and made 5 pots of the same color. I did that the other day, and I was so damn proud of myself of the color I made. I'm like, oh, this is going to be perfect. And then I opened up the other pot, and I'm like, it's exactly the same. Fantastic. That was time well spent. This is working. The resulting purples are pretty awesome. Hey, we all learned something from this for sure, right? So I could even put in a little more of the light pink if I wanted to. But it gives you a starting point. Pinks and purples can be tough too if you're mixing a warm pink and a cool purple and all of that. That's when color theory really gets into that. Christina Lee knows a crap ton about color theory. If you're not already following her, I would highly recommend do that because she talks a lot about this stuff that I just go with, I'm going to try it, and if I screw it up, I guess I'm going to need to buy a new bottle of paint. So there we go. So you could do all of those colors, and that would be a color grade. Yeah, I think I just chose the wrong colors for that. Doing a yellow to a blue would be really nice. There's all kinds of options with that. I would have a gallon of color by now, right? Yeah. These are kind of nice to be able to do it because then you can kind of eyeball and see that you've put the same amount of one color in and then a larger amount of another color to see that grade starting to form. That's always an option too. I have no idea what I'm going to do with this paint. All right, well, I'm going to try and put this little lid on it for now, and then I'll pack it up and put it in back in some bottles in a bit. I hope that was helpful, Elizabeth. I hope that was helpful, everybody. Oh my God. All right, well, that was fun, if nothing else, right? Oh my God. Okay, well, let's get back to this one, shall we? So I'm going up 2 sizes again in the tool. You might even find that going up 2 sizes isn't enough, right? You want to really focus on how much spacing do you want in between each one, right? And that just comes with practice on where that fits in for you. Well, we're doing all right so far, I think. Okay, good. I'm glad. Yes, that's technically how you do it. Just don't do it the way that I did it or with the colors that I did, or you'll end up with the same mess that I did. But it's still fun, though. It's so much fun. It's so satisfying to just be mixing paints and see what happens, especially when they turn out. You know, for every 5 that don't turn out, you get one that just takes your breath away and makes you go, kind of, damn, I'm good. And those are worth it. Those are the moments that are worth it. I set mine in Ziploc. Yes, that's a really, really good idea. I usually have a damp paper towel to put over top of I'll put a damp paper towel over the little pots, and I'll either put the lid on if it's a lidded palette, saran wrap, tin foil, anything I can to seal that moisture in there, and that will help keep them from drying out too. And sometimes if I mix colors that I don't really like, that I don't think I'm going to use separately, I'll pick the bottle of paint on my shelf that most closely matches that color, and I'll just dump it in there, and it can be a mixing color in there to change it slightly. All right, so we've got one more color to go. I'm going to put the lid, maybe the missing lid, this lid on this one and get that paint out of the way. And then we're going to bring in our final teal. Okay. So I was using a size 11. So now I need to use a size 13 and we're going to have no problem getting out to this outer edge. Now I'm going to keep going past this outer edge line here if I have to get all of my, my dots in, but I'm going to wait and see how it looks after this row. And I'm actually going to go up another size again. So I'm going up 3 sizes this time. So I used an 11 and this time I'm using a 14. So go up that one more. Because sometimes when you get out here, just going up one by one just doesn't fill up the space enough. And then you're left with huge gaps that you have to try and fill, or have to try to resist filling with too much detail. That's my problem. I see an empty space. I'm like, I have to fill that space. There needs to be something there. Yeah. It's not for everybody. It depends on how fast you're going through the paints. The palettes can work really well with a damp paper towel and just wrapping them in saran wrap or tin foil, or chucking them in a Ziploc bag or something. They can work really, really well, and then you don't mix, and then you're not mixing as many paints too, right? And the highest volume of paints. It really all depends on how much of each color you need for the project that you're working on. So for example, when I'm working on a large canvas, I'll mix 2 or 3 of these pots of the same color to make sure that I try to use out of the bottle as much as possible without mixing custom colors for really big pieces. Because otherwise you run the risk of running out of a color that you custom mixed. And I've had that happen on a project, and it really was upsetting. So now I would rather over prepare for the number. So let's see here. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to leave this as the last row. I think it looks good, and it's going to keep me from going too far. I don't want to go too much farther over into this one because I want to be able to see the center dot here. So I'm just going to kind of be aware of where this line is, and I'm still going to try and only build my mandala on this one up until this guideline that I have here, because this guideline is leaving me enough room to put a gold border like I did on the planter, right? So I'm leaving enough space to put that gold border around that when it comes to the other guidelines. Does that make sense, you guys? So I'm still going to assume that this mandala is going to come out to here because I'm going to hopefully have a border around that. If the paint is thick out of the bottle, do you mix water to get a certain consistency? Yes. So I know that was not a trick question. So the thing with water is if you add too much of it, you can add it too fast, and then it goes like from literally one drop to the next. It can go from the perfect consistency to way too watery. So what you really want to do is, if it's thick paint, go literally one drop at a time. Your other option is to use pouring medium. Now what pouring medium is going to do for you, and again, still just one drop at a time, but it's got, I don't know what the terminology would be to be correct to explain this. I want to say binding material. I want to say elasticity. The pouring medium isn't going to evaporate as quickly as water is going to. So having paint thin down with pouring medium as opposed to water might be better for drying and avoiding cracking. I hope that makes sense, Cindy. Let me know if that didn't make sense, and I will try again. All right, so in here, so I'm going to have, which one do I want to do? I want to do, these two are going to be pink. So I'm going to do this one in gray. So again, I've got my 5 different colors, and this is where it's going to get tricky. So this is where we really want to talk about this stuff. You're not as anal about filling spaces as Christina Lee. Yeah, I know. Okay, I'm glad that helps, Cindy. All right, so I am going to grab my center dot, and I'm going to, just for interest's sake here, to make my life a little easier, I'm just going to go right in the middle. And it goes close to that line as I possibly can. So I don't think I could have gotten any closer to that line. That worked out really well. So now I'm going to keep going with all of the tools that I did before, the same changes in sizing and everything. The difference now is that I'm not going to have as large of a space to be dotting on, right? Because I'm not going to be filling as much space as I was before. So this is where it can get a little tricky. The very first row that you do here is going to impact dramatically the rest of the part that is hidden. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple different tricks. Number one is if you want to just paint around it and then remove and paint over the dots you don't need, that's okay. So let's look at that as option number one. I'm going to go past this line and I'm going to dot here. I'm dotting at 12 o'clock. Dotting at 12 o'clock. I'm going to dot at 12 o'clock here. So this is one option, and this is definitely a good option. Then we're going to do it again here. And again here. And again here. And again here. Okay, and then we're going to go in here. I already know that I'm not going to need that one, so I'm going to skip it. I'm going to go in here. And in here. All right, does that make sense, you guys? This one I might need part of it, but we'll make do with the whole one. And then here. And then here. And then I'm not going to do those two. So now the next step I'm going to do is I'm actually going to remove this one because it just helped me with my spacing, right? And then I'm going to go in with a tiny paintbrush and a little bit of black paint and paint over that spot. Yeah, so you don't want to add too much water. If it's just a tiny amount of paint that you're mixing, then a little bit of water you're probably okay with, but I wouldn't want to go too far. I think the pouring medium might be a better bet. So I'm just going in here with some black paint now, painting over that spot. Oh, that's why I keep having a dot, because I stuck my hand in something. I'm like, where's that teal paint coming from? How's it getting on the canvas? I just put another dot here. So there we go. We fix it. That's why the black background is so convenient, because you can really cover up a lot of mistakes. It's very, very satisfying that way. All right, so the next step here is to do the next row, and you can do it exactly the same way. You can do all of the dotting and then just remove the stuff you don't want to have, and that includes partial dots, right? You can remove just little bits and pieces. If you're using the silicone tools, that's going to be a lot easier for you than if you're going in with, say, Q-tips or something. So if you don't have something like this, I would recommend toothpicks can help you do that, because you really don't care where that paint goes as long as it thins out so that it's flat, right? I don't need to actually remove it. I just need to move that paint around so that it's flat enough that I can paint over it and not have that bump there to deal with after. Here's the definition. Pouring medium is additive to use creates a thinner flowing consistency. Yes, in acrylic paints. Increase the paint flow, reduce the viscosity of heavier paints while maintaining color, texture, and opacity. Pouring medium's recipe is made by craft glue, acrylic gloss medium, acrylic retarder, and water together. Thanks, Autumn. Those poured paintings are amazing. Boy, that part. It is. It's a big mess. It is a really big mess. So, yeah, keep that in mind. I tried pour painting as well, but it didn't, it was messy. It was very, very messy. All right. So let me find my next tool. So we can continue to do this, right? We can continue to go and just keep dotting all the way around. And that's what I'm going to do here to show you that. I tried doing pour painting once, and oh my gosh, it was just an absolute disaster. Absolute disaster. So I'm going to start over here, even though that's going over into the other one that's going to overlap this. I don't really care right now. I just want to get the spacing done, and then I will remove what I need to remove. Right? And same with over here. There we go. Somebody was at the door, guys. So the puppies all had to... Never bothers me when the puppies talk, though. All right, here we go. We got a new horse today, you guys. So we now have eight animals. Yes, she does. I'm so envious of people who can do that because it's so beautiful. All right, so I don't need this dot, so I'm going to go ahead and remove it. I don't need this one, and then I don't need part of this one. I can decide. It doesn't have to be perfect, so I'm just going to remove those ones. If you want to remove partial dots, totally okay. Totally fine. Not a big deal at all. Oops, I'm losing power here on my phone. Bear with me. I thought I had it plugged in, but I had the wrong one plugged in. Oops. There we go. Should be good now. There's so many incredible pour painting artists out there. I love watching them. They have a calmness and a patience that I have for this, but not for their craft. And, you know, it's the other way around, right? It's funny what we have the patience for and what we don't. I looked at pouring medium is, and then what is pouring medium made out of? That's fantastic. Google's amazing. Thank you, Autumn. So yeah, if you're using just a tiny amount of paint, or if it's really, really thick, then the water isn't going to impact it as much as if you have already a slightly waterier acrylic paints, right? Yes. Yeah, so her name is Lucy, and she's a Clyde mix. They're out watching them because she has a bad foot, so trying to make sure that she doesn't get too much unnecessary exercise or end up being sore. So they're actually outside watching now to make sure she's okay. So I'm still going to pull a little bit of this one off, because then I'll show you the other way to do this detail. So let's get in really close here. So see how this dot had gone over that line? I'm going to keep the half dot there by simply pulling part of it away and then coming in with some black paint and going over it part way. It all depends on how much time do you want to spend doing little piddly details like this, okay? So it's completely up to you. There is nothing wrong with not doing this. You could go in with a smaller tool there for that overlapping part instead of putting in the larger dot, right? You don't have to do the exact same size. You can adjust by the size of your dotting tool if that helps. How's the scared girl doing? She's doing okay. She's doing all right. We have another fenced in section. She's been in that for most of the day. Oh, they're running. Oh, they're really running. Hold on. Don't see where she is though. Oh, they're all in a tizzy though. Everybody's in a big tizzy, so all the horses and one of the donkeys are now out running in the middle of the field. Let me see if I can take you over there and show you. Let's see. It's hard to see, and I can't really zoom in. So over there is the barn. And then straight ahead of me here, we have two donkeys. And then we've got a couple of the other horses were running around over there. And the new girl is way out in the back, I think, with a couple of the other horses. They're putting her through her paces, but it's good because they're my friend and her husband are out there with their little tractor, and just trying to kind of intervene if and when they need to. So it's not just a free for all right now. They're out there watching to make sure everything is okay. All right, so when that dries, it'll show a little bit differently, and then we're gonna move on to gray number 2 now. So it's gonna continue like this as we keep making it bigger, right? So let's see. Like on 51st Dates, yes. Yeah, so her name is Lucy. We had another new horse come to us last week. She's a really young girl. She's only 2. Lucy is about 18. But we have another young girl, and her name is Ducky. And she is, she's very, very young. So she is getting an opportunity to learn how to be a horse. So she's getting there. She had a rough go. So I found Focalt Machi surface very thick. Yes, I do too. On the mugs, I love it because it keeps it from dripping down the sides of the mugs, but it is definitely very, very thick. When I have waterier paints, when I'm using them on the mugs, I find that I have to sit and let them dry in between and kind of prop them up so that the paints don't drip down the mugs. I have to do that quite often. And that really, really slows me down. So for the mugs, I find the Folk Art really, really good. Martha Stewart is also another thick one for the multi-surface paints, but for craft acrylics, I don't find Folk Art that much thicker, or that much different than, say, Deco Art or Craft Smart. Maybe a little bit, but not by much. But it is typically, yeah, one of the thicker paints. So there we go. We're going to get to a point where these are not going to work out so nicely here as far as spacing is concerned, but that's okay. When we get there, we will get there. But see how I'm only filling in the spaces that I need to? And if I put a dot down and I find that it's taking up too much space, then I can always go back in and do something about it. Right? And I'm not going to because it's staying on there fairly easily. When you take them on so early and older too. Yeah, this is the first young one that's come here. So it's unusual because typically much more comfortable and familiar with the old guys. So it's unusual for sure. But yeah, we'll take them. We're working on some changes too, you guys. And I don't want to get into this too much, but we are going to kind of change it to a working farm and rescue as opposed to a sanctuary. There are a lot of bells and whistles to being a registered charity that could be very beneficial, but there's also a lot of limitations on what you can do, how you can do it, and the hoops you have to jump through to get to do it. So we're finding that really difficult. So we're looking at ways to be a rescue and work in conjunction with other rescues and sanctuaries to help foster and kind of be a boarding facility and a foster facility. And then help those rescues and sanctuaries that we work with to get funding and everything. But for right now, we're finding it's incredibly difficult to kind of how are we going to get through those hoops, and how does that limit our ability to really help the animals that we want to help? So because of that, I am going to be kind of a silent partner in this because it is Anita and Lars's farm, and I'm totally okay with that. But I'm going to be helping them to promote everything and to help them generate enough business from the rest of their farm, which is going to be like doing horse trailering, getting fosters and boarders, doing social media, creating some merch, figuring out other things that we can grow and sell that will basically help to fund the fostering and rescue portion. I hope that makes sense. So we're not going forward with the full charity, and that's okay because there's a lot of big hoops to jump through, and it was just getting so unbelievably stressful. And it felt like it was really holding us back from jumping in and getting this done. I love how you're changing up directions and showing how the size matter to fitting in. And it's such a learning process. It totally is. And the thing to remember with all of this, you guys, is this is supposed to be fun, right? make sure you let yourself have fun. Okay? Well, and that's the thing, right? There's so many of those loopholes. And then, you know, once you're running a sanctuary, then there's loopholes where it comes, not loopholes, but just different hoops you have to jump through when it comes to what other businesses can you run off the same property? How do you do that and separate out personal business and sanctuary business? And you know, is the sanctuary renting barn space from the farm, or is the farm donating barn space to the sanctuary? Like, there was so much. And it was kind of like, can we just start looking after some animals and see what happens? So someday it might work out to become a full-fledged charity, but at this particular point, we just want to get into it, right? I'm going to actually use this tool, and I'm going to try and get just a little bit of paint on one side, because I want to try and fill in a little bit of a hole there. So you see how I got just a little bit of paint? I'm going to try and line that up here. So I did a little, and that was not what I wanted it to do, but that's okay. I'll try it again after. Yeah, I think I'm best just to leave that one. Nobody's going to notice that little one being gone. And that's the thing too, right? Where do you get hung up on the perfectionism of how this is going to go, right? Almost better to finish off the painting and then go looking for the holes that kind of stick out and catch your eye, and then try to fill them from there. And maybe filling them with a paintbrush is more going to be more productive than trying to screw around with it while you're still just laying down all of the colors, right? So kind of pick and choose where you want to spend that time. Going back in and filling things in is always an option. So I've got my 2 rows of that one. So now we're going on to, oh no, we got our 2 rows of that one too. Now we're going on to number 3. This one. All right. So my next gray, I'm going to go up a size. And you'll start to see, based on how much space there is, where you can fit these other ones in, right? Like this one here, I want to put this in about here. I'll probably go back in and I'll paint over that half of the dot later. That's okay. It's okay. We're going to be running such a tight business with all the other stuff that we want. I have no doubt we're still going to be able to help a lot of animals, and bring in that revenue. You know, Anita and Lars have a horse trailer now, so they're going to be able to kind of contract themselves out to help people moving their horses around. That's going to be a huge opportunity that should bring in some pretty decent cash to keep them fiscally doing well and taking care of their family and all of that sort of thing. And we're going to still make up merch. We're gonna find ways that, you know, we can grow it as a business, as opposed to growing donations. Well, you can buy a hoodie or a baseball hat or something someday when we get those made. That's always an option. Yeah, the dot charts, I thought of that a couple of times too, and it's, especially when you start collecting a whole bunch of paints, it's really going to be more cumbersome than you want it to be. But it's a fun idea for sure, because there's a lot of satisfaction in creating something like that, I think. So I totally get it. Totally get it. And I closed up that paint and I didn't mean to. Yes, humidity affects the paint. That makes a big difference. How warm your room is, you know, if it's just too hot, there's all kinds of things that could impact it, right? And there, and then we turn this around. What I find when I've done these in the past, it was much more intimidating than it actually was, right? Like, it wasn't as difficult to do these overlaps as I had anticipated it was going to be. It can certainly still be a work in progress, and, you know, like, dividing up those half dots and painting over them, but that's little tiny detail you can do later with a paintbrush, right? So that's the really light one. Which one's this one's next? These gray paints I've had mixed up for a while because I've got a project in mind for them because I have a round canvas and I'm dying to paint it, but I got to get caught up on mug orders first. Yeah, it is. It's a total learning experience, right? And it's a crapshoot because, again, you can't always assume that, hey, I bought folk art and I know folk art behaves this way. No, it's I know folk art, this color tends to behave this way, and we'll see if it does this time too. It's always a bit of a crapshoot. Like, well, typically folk art is nice and thick, and then you're going to, of course, get the one that's super watery that's going to go, oh, great, thanks. Everything I thought I knew is not true. And so this one's an interesting one too, because this one would go right about here. So I'm still going over that line, but this is just showing me that I'm going to want to go in and do some painting over those and maybe even pull some of that paint off. When you're doing something that's a big enough piece though, painting over that small bit of paint probably isn't going to impact it too much. Like, it's not like this is super, super thick puffy paint. If you were using heavier bodied acrylic paints, then that would probably be more of a concern. But with this relatively watery craft acrylics, it's not going to create that much of an issue when you paint over it. And besides, I'm going to be not only painting over it in black, but then going over it with a potential border too, right? Even though blue slept through the night, I'm still really tired, so I'm taking a break before the next color. Good. Take a break and take care of yourself, Sharon, and get some rest. You guys being healthy is the most important thing. So there. And there. It's all about kind of judging with your eye whether you think that the next one would be showing over there or not. And it's really quite satisfying when it's not, so you don't have to create those little half dots. But like this one here, there's nowhere near that much space between these dots, right? So I need to come in, and now I'm comparing the space here between these largest dots and then trying to put this at about the same distance from those, right? Maybe a little bit bigger. There we go. And then I'll go back in with some black paint once these dry. Awesome. Good. I hope that this is helpful, you guys. The blocking out of the design is really going to be the biggest game changer for you. Knowing for sure which ones you want to be the ones that are overlaying the others, which ones are underneath. That's going to be a really crucial part for you. So that was an 11. So now I need to move up to a 13. So I'm still going up by 2 right now. And then for the final row, I'm going to go up by 3. Even that, and this paint again is a little watery, so if it's a little watery, it's going to behave a little bit differently, right? So you got to kind of get used to it a little bit. So I'm going to go here because I want to see more of how that distance is between these large dots so I can get it right on the side, right? So if I know that there's about that much space in between that dot, those dots typically, then I'm going to go here and place another one, and then I'll go back over it again in a bit. And this one I'm going to go right here. Perfect. And then we flip her around and then do this one. This one. And then this one. And then this one. All right, the next one I'm going to go up 3 sizes, so I'm using a 13, so I'm going to go up to a 16. Which one's that? This one. It's kind of neat though, eh? If you were doing this on a mug, I probably wouldn't do this on a mug because of that. The other thing is to just remove that paint really, really quickly. The other option too, actually, is if you're doing it on a mug with multi-surface, once it dries to the point where you should be able to scrape it off, you could go in with a very fine pin and try and slice it. But yeah, I honestly probably wouldn't do this on a mug for that reason, because I think it would be very, very difficult. Oops. Yeah, I think it would be really difficult. Well, I just went darker again. Crap, I just grabbed the wrong paint. So that happens too, especially when you're doing color grades that are very, very subtle. So we're gonna pull those off. Or you have the option too to let it dry and then just put a dot right over top of it. When it comes to the mugs and being able to do this on a mug, the other options would be you could tape it off. I don't know if masking fluid would work on a mug to create the circles for you, and then you just pull the masking part off. That might be possible. How did you draw out the grid on a mug? I don't. I put a piece of painter's tape around the center of the mug. And that gives me my center line for that main level, that first line of dots that everything else is going to build around. So I use painter's tape. So for example, when I blocked out this mug, I used a piece of painter's tape that went right around here, and then I dotted along that, and then I don't use grids after that. I just look at the spaces. Now, if you wanted to do, excuse me, my goodness. If you wanted to do a shape like this, then that's just all practice on your spacing. You could probably use now I did use a dry erase marker once before, but it impacted the shape of the dots. So even as I say that out loud, I wouldn't recommend that. I don't know if there's any other kind of pencil that you could use on ceramic for that. So I'm really not sure what you would do for that, to be honest with you. If I was going to do one personally, I would do a design like this where I can get the spacing, whether there's a grid line or not. That would be the way I would go with it. Because once you've got those first couple of rows down, your spacing is almost taken care of for you in a lot of ways, because then you can place your dots depending on where the spaces between the other dots are, right? So that kind of creates your spacing for you. But that's a little tricky. That just takes practice. That just takes practice and being patient with yourself. Can you post a pic of this on your Facebook group when you get it finished? Absolutely, I will. 100%. I will start with posting a picture of how much we get done on it today. And then whenever I do finish it, then yes, we 100% will do that. Next week's tutorial is going to be also overlapping designs, but doing overlapping designs that have petals. They're almost easier because you can really stop the line of dots fairly easily when you're doing walking dots and stuff. So they're almost a little easier than these ones. But at the same time, they feel more complicated. So that's why I left them for the next one, because I know what you guys are capable of. I know you guys can do this. So there we go. And then this is another one I'm going to have to paint over after, because I need to make sure that I have that. And sometimes just angling your tool. So if I lean my tool more to the other side, I'm not going to put as much pressure on the paint down here, and it doesn't need to be a perfect dot that way. So then that one is basically, oh no, this one I have to do over here too. It's about there, like that. Is this making sense so far, you guys? Masking fluid is a great idea. Yeah, I've never used it on ceramic. I'm really nosy as heck to see if that works for you, though. We'll have to try it. I'll try it on one of mine, too, because I've got some lying around here, too. One of the other many projects, I'm like, oh, I'm totally going to make alcohol ink coasters and then draw mandalas on them. Yeah, no, I haven't done that. So many projects are like, oh, I totally want to do that. And then I get it. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that right now. We've created a topic in the Facebook group called tutorials. Put that hashtag on when you upload the photo of your tutorial pieces. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, we'd love to see what you create. If you are comfortable with sharing that with us, we'd love to see it. We would love to see it. And I will definitely get the tutorial pieces in there. I'm going to go back through previous tutorials and make sure that I have pictures of those as well to kind of give you some ideas of what those are. Another quick thing too, just before we're getting closer to the end, we're gonna get started on. I'm actually gonna think I'll start on this pink one here. These tutorials are always free to attend. Previous tutorial recordings are available on my website. And I also have a Patreon membership. So if you want access to the entire library, past, present, and future, then Patreon might be an option for you as well. And all of those links are in my bio. If you have any questions, though, please let me know. All right, so starting with pink. Going right in the center here. And again, you don't have to be super picky with where you line these up, right? As long as it's pretty darn close, you're going to be fine. Don't beat yourself up for not getting perfect. My daughter commented on your tattoo. She used to think it was paint when she watched your videos, but now she said it's old fancy glasses with wing sides, set of closed eyelashes. Yes. It is. It's these are Luna Lovegood's glasses, her Spectre Specs from Harry Potter. Because I am a nice big nerd, and I love it. Huge Harry Potter fan. Huge Lord of the Rings fan. I have a Lord of the Rings tattoo as well. I've got a bunch of tattoos, but my other tattoo, this is my Lord of the Rings tattoo. It is written in one of the Elvish languages that Tolkien created, and it says, "Love yourself." Shared dot work. Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you, Sharon. Today I'm just watching Not Enough Spoons to Paint Yet. Still in recovery mode. Totally get that. Totally get that. I'm just happy you're here, Rex. We love nerds. You're all about the art. Yes, yes, yes. That's awesome, Autumn. I got to go back in, what year would that have been in? 2013 or 14, I think. I'd have to look it up. I was in Orlando for a work conference, and I took an extra week off of work while I was down there. I'm like, well, if work is paying for my flight to Florida, by God, I'm going to make the most out of it. So I stayed for an extra week, and I went to Universal. I lounged by the pool most of the time, but I did go to Universal so that I could go to the Harry Potter section of it. And I went by myself. I do a lot of things by myself because I'm not going to miss out on doing the things that I want to do just because nobody else can come with me. That's kind of how I've always felt about it anyway. It's like, if I want to do this, I need to be able to do it whether someone comes with me or not, because I might not have anybody else in my life that wants to do it, right? Anyways, so I went there, and I remember standing at the gate waiting to get in, and I forced myself to not look at the map. I wanted to just kind of happen upon Hogsmeade and just be there. And I remember I was going through Jurassic Park section, and I turned the corner and I saw the gates into Hogsmeade, and I just burst into tears. Burst into tears because I was just so happy. It was such a fun day. I walked in, and I went to, I had the Lord of the Rings tattoo at that point, and I went to get like a keychain or something, because I remember they had the proper spelling of my name, and nobody ever has the proper spelling of my name on anything, because I spell my name Jaime. And I remember going in there, and they had a keychain that had my name on it, and when I was buying it, the lady who was working the kiosk, she said, which Elvish language is your tattoo written in? I was like, oh my God, I found my people. It was so exciting. She's like, yeah, my daughter and I are learning to speak it. I'm like, oh my God, I can never leave here. Yeah, we might need a tattoo topic. I like that. If you want to do it, you can see what you want, not waiting. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that. I've gone on vacation a couple of times by myself, and let me tell you, best damn time ever. Because I didn't have to check with anybody, right? I didn't have to check with anybody. When do you want to eat? When do you not want to eat? Do you want to go to the beach? I got to do everything that I wanted to do, and it was really fun. I'm not saying it wouldn't have been fun if I had somebody to go with me, but I'm not gonna not do it just because I don't. That's kind of my mentality is if I want to do it, I'm going to do it. The problem is I've gotten so used to and so comfortable with doing things alone that I tend to just book myself tickets to do stuff, and I don't even ask my friends if they want to come with me anymore. I just go do it, and they're like, why didn't you tell me you were going? I would have come with you. I'm like, I don't know. I don't need to ask people anymore, so I just do it. It's kind of funny. My mom has said to me before, she's like, we're really proud of you of how well you're doing living alone and being alone. I'm like, okay. And she said, but we think you might be a little too good at it. I'm like, yeah, probably. That's fair. That's a fair assessment. I'm very good at it, and I enjoy it too. So that doesn't really motivate me to go and change that, right? We saw it in California Universal. It's so cool. Yeah, right? Oh, it's so amazing. So amazing. I just didn't want to leave. I did not want to leave that section of the park. I just stayed there all day and just soaked up the vibe. It's also why I wanted to be there nice and early too, because I wanted to, before it was too crazy busy. It was so nice. And I mean, there was other cool stuff there too, but I just did the one park in Orlando. Someday I'm going back because I need to get myself to Epcot because I want to ride the Millennium Falcon. So bad. All right, here we go. Next row. Next row. So we're building this out. Also, she here and said you can say sorry and bag. Her boyfriend is from Saskatchewan on a reservation, and she loves it when he says those words, but he wears that. Everyone in Canada sounds the same. No, I don't think so. That's funny. There's always different words that people ask me to say. I'd like to get a tattoo for my sister. She died of ovarian cancer. I'm so sorry, Cindy. Too afraid of the pain it might be. No, it's nowhere. Yeah, as long as you don't get it on a place that's super, super sensitive. You know when you have an itch and you scratch that itch just a little bit too long that it kind of hurts and you're like, oh, that's not helping the itch anymore. That's just hurting. That's kind of what it feels like. It's not comfortable by any stretch, but it's not excruciating pain, at least for me, and everybody's going to feel things differently, but it's nowhere near as bad as I had thought it was going to be. It doesn't feel like a bunch of tiny knives getting you or anything. So try something really small on a really less painful part of your body if you want to, and see how you do. I'm totally addicted to it. Totally addicted to it. I can't wait to get another tattoo. I'm actually going to take one of the mug designs, and I'm going to take that pattern and get it created as like a garter around my leg. I think that'd be so cool. And I'm going to draw myself a couple mandalas probably at some point too. But I had somebody request that I do a mandala design for them for a tattoo, and just looking into it and everything, and it just seemed like such a big animal that I'm like, I'm not ready for this yet. We say things so differently in California. A lot would depend on your pain tolerance. Totally, 100%. And the tattoo artist, exactly. Yeah, sometimes they put the numbing agent on, right? And that can help. That can definitely help. that's 7, 8. Where's my smaller one? I lost a tool. Okay, here we go. Yes, the numbing cream too, for sure. Yeah, I'm totally addicted. I need more tattoos. Drives me crazy. I want more so bad. All right, here we go. A little bit bigger. Oops, totally not even on camera. I'm so sorry, you guys. There we go. So getting closer to the edges, again, let the paint, if you're close to the edge on yours, whenever you are getting close to the edge, just let it run right over the side. Place it where you would place it if you had the full surface underneath you, and just keep going and let it run over. So again, I do the every other one just because that helps me with my spacing. So I put this one down based on keeping it aligned with that little dip in between those two underneath, right? And then this dot, I'm looking at what's the halfway point between those two dots. I know it goes blurry because when I get my hand in there, I'm so sorry. Not the best circle there, but that's okay. And this is where it can get tricky too, that you might find that you need to set it aside and let it dry a little bit, right? Because you might be starting to fill up the canvas enough that you don't have somewhere to put your hands and rest your hands while you're doing your dotting. And that's okay. You can set your paint aside, and if you were to walk away for about a half an hour, a good chunk of all of this would be dry already. And that's totally up to you. I probably would. I set my paintings aside quite a little bit because of, what am I thinking? Because of not being able to put it down. When you're doing one piece that comes from the center all the way out, then it's different, right? Because you're always working around the outside of it. But it's definitely different. I'm needle phobic, so took a mild tranquilizer before your tattoo. There you go. My luck, my tattoo artist would dot like I do and have wonky dots. That's entirely possible. I'm addicted to tattoo. Yes, totally. Totally. Definitely want to take your time and interview your tattoo artist. 100%. 100%. Yeah, I've been very lucky. I have, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. 8. Yeah, I have 8. I got a huge tattoo on my shoulder when I went to New Zealand. I went to New Zealand for my 40th birthday. I treated myself, and I went to Hobbiton, and I did all of the touristy stuff. It was the best 3 weeks of my life. And right before I left to come home, at the very beginning of my trip, I had booked an appointment with a tattoo artist for when I was back in Auckland again. And I got a beautiful, beautiful tattoo. He talked to me about my life and my story because he wanted to personalize something for me, and it's absolutely gorgeous. I can't wait to go there again and get another one. I would let him cover my entire body in tattoos. He was so good. There we go. And it's cool to have a tattoo with a really cool story to it too. Some tattoos should be in private, totally. No, absolutely zero obligation to. There's no must. If you want to, you can. I just simply can't get pictures of all of mine, and I'm not asking anybody to do it for me. So there we go. All right, and there. I'm going to sneeze again, you guys. I'm really sorry. Excuse me. No, it's coming. Oh my goodness. Oh, I hate sneezing. All right, here we go. So we're making progress. You're going to find that some colors are going to make some transitions, like from one color to another, a little bit easier and more noticeable. But you're going to be able to pick out what those colors are that you're going to want to work with going forward. And you can always add a little bit of white paint if you need to as well. All right, there we go. So that was 1, 2, 3 colors. Oops, my phone's telling me to rotate. There we go. I have a really nice lotus. It needs a touch up, but it won't get done by anybody but the guy who did it originally. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Shannon, the non, does stick and poke tattoos. All right, I'm going now to go up to a size 10 tool because this paint isn't spreading as much as the other ones. So I'm gonna go up, instead of just going up one size, I'm gonna go up 2. Once these are all dry, there's a bunch of options. You can do top dots on these. You can go in and add little detail dots in between, like I had talked about with the other one. Like, I think it would be really cool to do like teal accent dots in here, and maybe pink accent dots on the gray, and then gray accent dots on the teal. You can mix it up and just do all white or all gold. You can really have some fun with it. For top dots, you've already got a bunch of colors mixed. So on your center dot, which is color number 1, you could put color number 2, 3, 4, and 5 as your top dots. You can pick and choose which ones you want to top dot and which ones you want to just leave as is too. But there's lots of fun that you can have with these patterns once they're all done and dry. All right. So there's that. That's number 10. Now I'm going to number 12. I've talked to her a little bit. Your sleeve makes me hold my breath. I know, right? Yeah, it all depends. Oh, thank you, Cindy. And blessed poo, thank you. Thanks, Renee. How you doing, Renee? I didn't see you sneak in here. Makes me hold my breath. Can't believe you haven't dipped it in your paint yet. I honestly can't either. I've kind of come to the conclusion that anything that I own, if I choose to wear it while painting, I'm probably going to ruin it. So I have to be totally okay with that before I even walk into the studio. I'm like, am I wearing something that I actually care about? Because if I am, I need to change. I'm going to get something on me today. It's just a matter of what. Here we go. And when it's a larger paint pot like these ones are compared to the little tiny ones, it's really tough because they do dry out a lot quicker, right? Because there's more air in the containers. So, and you don't have as deep of a puddle of paint to dip your tool in either. There we go. And then there. And again, I don't look to see if there's space over here before the edge. I look at about how big is the space between those 2 dots. And then I kind of just try to recreate that space right around there. That makes sense? I hope it does anyway, you guys. All right, on to the final color for the pink. So I don't know yet if I'm only going to do 1 row of the final color like in the teal, or if I'm going to get 2 rows done like I did on the gray, but we're just going to wing it and see what happens. So that was a size 13 tool. So I'm actually going to go up to a size, oh no, that wasn't a size 13. I'm going to go up to a size, no, what was that I used? I'm going to do a 15. I'm going to go up big. Big, big, big. Let's see what happens. Talked to her a little bit. Now she's almost in my backyard. Yeah, still 500 miles away, but yeah. Watching the whole time, I feel you. I totally love the idea of doing top dots gradients. Yes, totally. And you could do it opposite, right? You can do any of that stuff. And when you do the little dots in between, you can do you can do the gradient. Like I could start with the lightest teal in here and work my way out to the darkest teal. You can start with the darkest teal and work your way out to the lightest. You can do whatever you want because there's no rules. So many ideas. I have a whole drawer for painting clothes. Ruined so much, totally. Well, that's true, Elizabeth. Very good point. And I've done that, I've done that where I've stuck my arm in a painting. I painted a guitar once for funky upbeat designs. I've painted a few things with them, a couple of clocks and a couple of drums and a guitar, and they're a pair of artists in Markham. Anyways, I painted a guitar for them once, and I wiped the equivalent of probably 1/4 of the entire guitar surface off with my arm. I had paint all over my arm, and I had smudged it all over, like, and it was a decent sized acoustic guitar, and I just smudged the ever-living daylights out of it. It was awful. I cried. I walked away from it for a good 5 or 6 hours. But then when I went back in, I just said, nope. And I painted over it, and it was fine. So it's all fixable. It's all fixable. It's just a matter of, are you going to go to all of the lengths that are necessary to fix it? So see now how I'm left with those spaces, you guys? This is where now I can decide to go in and I'm going to do touch-ups on those ones that go over the line, or I will add in a border and then start to go from there. So maybe what we'll do is for next week's tutorial, I was going to do overlapping designs, but with petals. Why don't we just continue on with this one? Well, I'll finish in this pink one at some point on my own, and then we will talk about top dots, we will talk about detail dots, and we'll talk about putting that border around. How does that sound, you guys? This is the pattern that I need to practice on and get used to my tools and my paints and specific surfaces. I'm going to stick with this design until I'm comfortable with it, and then I'll graduate to more complicated. Yes! Yes, yes, yes. And yes, this singular rotating design. Think of how many different things you can do with this one, right? You can change the colors. You can make each row a different color. Like when you look at, so there's this design, right? That's the overlapping. On a heartstone, I did this design. Then there's this design. Then there's this design, right? There's so many different things that you can be painting with this design that are completely different and look completely different. Just by playing with color, playing with placement, size, tools, do you leave spaces for the little dots, or do you make it more tightly packed together? There are so many decent options out there and so many fun options out there. One of the other ones that I had started, and I really, really, really want to get back to it, but I don't think I still have the colors mixed, so I might have to start over, is, let me see if I can get this up here high enough to show you, is this one. So this is that same design, right? Just doing a whole bunch. Let me move my lamp out of the way. It's my lamp, Sharon. I love my lamp. And then I did a bunch of these, right? And then you can see the guidelines in behind are ones that are going to be overlapping. But I don't have these colors mixed anymore. So I'm the kind of person that I need to just kind of power through it. But now that I know that I really like this design, this is one that when I start doing canvases again, I want to do an absolute crap ton of these big canvases with all these overlapping circles, because I think it'll just look super, super cool. And different color combos, right? Like I picture this in a bunch of teals. And what about doing this in a bunch of the different color grades? What if each circle was its own color grade and I did the colors of all the chakras? Or the chakras, sorry. There's so many different options that you can do that, right? It's all kinds of fun stuff. Had to step away from the heartstones because they were wrecking my brain. I couldn't get my center dots and tools, and my tools were wonky. I just had to step away. And sometimes you totally have to do that, right? It also jacks with my brain totally, because it doesn't, the thing with rainbows is that it doesn't leave a lot of room for error, right? If you're misaligned a little bit, you're gonna see it. And it's trippy. It pulls you in there. It's an optical illusion almost when that's in there, right? But you can have as much fun with this as you want. You can, once you know how many dots are in that circle, here, let me move this out of the way. I'm going to show you something else. This is the basis of your spiral designs as well, right? So if where do I have a spiral? I must have a spiral around here somewhere. Hold on. Yes, I do. So this design is the exact same design that I used for this. It's the same thing, only you're changing the placement of color and you're creating a spiral. You could create a couple of rows all the same color and make it a really big spiral. This is the basis. This design is the basis for so many different things. Shop World Love is a phenomenal artist that does a lot of these kinds of designs and just keeps it simple with different color combos. So don't be afraid to take inspiration from these other artists that are doing that stuff too, right? Because you can create so many different looks and so many different ideas with the same basic patterns, right? That's the thing. Don't make it too difficult on yourself. Don't try and always be creating new. Stick with what works and practice what works, because the more you practice, and especially I like these because again, they do up fairly quickly, right? They're fairly quickly. You get some instant gratification and you have some clear ideas of where you need to practice more. And the practice is fun. I enjoy these ones. So find the style that you really enjoy and just keep practicing. Shop World Love, are they on TikTok, Facebook, or all? Oh, they're on Instagram. I don't know if they are on Facebook or TikTok, honestly. I completely forgot to even look to see what else they had. So they are on Instagram. All right, you guys. Well, time for the long goodbye. Thank you so much for coming and joining me today. We will continue on with this one next week, doing the border, doing the top dots, doing the detail dots and everything. I will have this pink one finished to the same point where this one is, or maybe I'll even add in a different color. Maybe I'll add in like a royal blue or something. But I'm going to put something else in this corner and get that ready for next week. And again, the border, the top dots, and all of the detail dots, and we'll finish this off. Okay, if you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. If you would like access to the recording of this video, you can do that either through my Patreon membership, where you get access to the entire library for about $13 a month, or you can purchase the recordings individually on my website. But these are always free to attend live, so I'm just grateful that you are here. Please take care of yourselves. Make sure you spend some time this week doing something that you love just for the fun of it. And I'm sending you huge amounts of love, and we will see you again really, really soon. Thank you, everybody. Hope you had a great time, and have a great rest of your weekend. Thanks, guys. I'm glad it was helpful. Reach out if you have any other questions, okay? Oh, and I did release more I released some black mugs on my website today. So if you were holding out for a mug, there are some black ones available for custom order. All right. Love you guys. Thank you.